Good morning.
Hello.
Hi, Jay. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing, Margaret?
Yeah, good, actually. Yeah, enjoying the summer.
Mhm. Good morning, everyone. Hi, David.
Hi, David.
Hi, Marguerite. Hi, Mr. Bennett. We have 4 minutes before 9 o'clock. Mhm. Now we can see everyone in their full glory.
So to
Hi,
speak.
Linda.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Where are you?
We are on Captiva.
Oh, how lucky for you.
Yeah, it's wonderfully nice. We always pray for a little bit of rain. It hasn't come regularly yet, but we had a few good showers.
Well, we have plenty of it where I am. The boats are going to start floating away soon.
That's not good. We don't like floating.
Floating away boats.
Yeah.
Good morning, Sandy. Good morning, John. Good morning, John, without an H.
David, you decided when you're coming back to Florida yet?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
And will you be back for a while, do you think, or?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
I didn't know there were so many black bears in Florida. I didn't even think there were black bears in Florida.
Well, they're certainly in the spotlight in recent days here.
I mean, we have black bears, pumas, Florida panthers, coyotes. What else do we have? Oh, and alligators. What other big apex predators do we have?
Most
Visitors from Miami.
True, true.
Hey, it is 9 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everyone to the June 10th meeting of the Captiva Community Panel. Both our panel members and our guests, of which I see on the screen, and our attendees, participants, attendees in the audience. First thing is roll call. David Mintz is here. Mike Bennett. He's here. Marguerite Ty Maville,
I'm here.
Linda Laird,
Here.
Sandy Stillwell Youngquist,
Here.
and John Wade. He's here. John Rosen,
Here.
John Jensen.
Yeah, here, David.
Okay, Bruce McDonald, I don't see him here. Ken Suarez,
I'm here.
great. And Tony Lappy. I don't see Tony yet. So, but we definitely have a quorum. And the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the May 2025 minutes of the panel. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay, any discussion? Is there a second, actually? I'm sorry. Is there a second?
Second.
On second, John Wade, is there any discussion on it? I see one issue, there's a discussion, Ken Gudaham, are you with us? Yes. There's a discussion of the ladder truck with the fire department, and it said there was opposition from the district attorney. I believe that that was opposition from the county attorney, not the district attorney, not the attorney from the fire district, but I believe it was the county attorney that objected to the contract between South Seas and the fire department. But we'll get clarity with on that later with Jeff Powell, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't a district attorney, but a county attorney. Other than that, are there any other suggested changes to the minutes?
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great, minutes passed. Should be short meeting. It's the summer, but there's a lot on the agenda today and a lot of interesting things that are taking place. So we'll try to go through the meeting quickly. The first thing is a report from our county sheriff's office with Deputy Chris Lusk. He's with us. Deputy, there you go.
Good morning, everybody. Yep, summertime. So we're in that kind of summertime schedule. So we don't really have a lot to go over. Just two quick things. Obviously, it's hurricane season. It's warm. You know, we're monitoring every day. Rich and I, we and Christine, we get on there and we monitor the weather channels and all the weather pages just to kind of keep up to date on everything. One of the big things that was a big help for us, if we ever do get a storm, is if you have workers that are going to come out to work on a property if a storm comes. Hopefully nothing happens this year, you know, fingers crossed. But if it happens, we made it through all these storms so far with no burglaries, nothing like that. And we'd like to maintain that. But one of the big things that we did is when people would show up on your property, we would always check out with them and make sure that they are people that are supposed to be there and supposed to work, be there working, and not just people that traveled from another state just looking for work. So if you have somebody showing up to your property to do some work, landscaping, you know, simple things like make sure they know who you are. Like if they're doing work at David Mintz's house and I pull up and I say, hey, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm doing work. Well, for who? I don't know. Some guy. If they can just know your name, or some information about you so that they can give it to, so we can verify that they are supposed to be there and on your property. That was a big help for us. And during Ian and Helene, it did help us prevent a couple of issues. The only other thing that we had that we wanted to bring up to you is we're getting flagged down quite a bit about a lot of these scam calls and scam text messages about your toll plaza bill being overdue and the DMV is going to issue a warrant for you, or they'll get a phone call from somebody saying that you have a warrant from the sheriff's office, and if you give them $500, they'll pay off the warrant. Those are scams. The sheriff's office is not calling you, asking you for $500 to pay off your warrant. That's not happening. We don't do that. That's not a thing. If you have a warrant, I'll knock on your door. You know, I'm not gonna call you. Same thing with the DMV or any of these other organizations that they might suspend your license or something like that. If you're not sure and you traveled and maybe you went down to Miami or something, you went to some toll plazas, very simple. Hang up with that person on the phone. Do not reply to their text message. Call that organization directly. Call SunPass, call Leeway, get the information directly from the horse's mouth. And most of the time they can just handle those. If there is an issue, they'll handle it for you right over the phone. If you ever have a question, call us before you give anybody any money over the phone, which I don't know of any of these organizations that would take it. But if you feel like you need to, call us first. Let us help you so that you don't get scammed, so you don't lose any money. That's what we're here for. If anybody has any other questions or anything, please let us know. And I hope everybody's prep for storm season is good going and everything's in order. And again, if you guys need help with that, please contact us and let us know.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Sounds-
Chris. Are there any questions for Chris?
Nope.
Ken, are there any questions for Chris from the audience?
There are not.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris. Be safe.
Mhm.
Next is our Chief Jeff Powell from the Captiva Fire District.
Morning, everyone. I'll clear that up for you now, David. That was not our attorney. It was the county attorney that objected to that.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. I won't harp on hurricane season. As Chris just kind of mentioned, it's you should be or hopefully are in the process of preparing. So I did that last month. I won't harp on that. One thing I will mention, we're kind of looking at our processes for directly after a storm and accounting for people and property and whatnot. If you don't know, directly after hurricane, we have to go to each individual property and verify level of damage and or did anybody stay in that house? If so, are they okay? Not have to go through that whole process. So it's obviously time consuming, takes up a lot of manpower, a lot of hours. So we're just trying to look at ways to know whether or not beforehand if any of your properties have people staying there, whether it's you guys personally, friends, family, you know, you let somebody stay there because you thought your house was safer than theirs, kind of thing. We've kind of looked at it in the past and never really get good intel before storms on whether or not the house is empty or not. A lot of times we're told, yep, we're leaving, we evacuated, and then we get back and find out, nope, they changed their mind and they stayed. So just kind of working through with some other fire districts and counties and cities on how they do their processes to speed that up. So I'll keep you guys informed as we move on if we figure out a good way to do it. Some places use forms similar to how we do with EV vehicles, so we may do something similar to that on our website. You can just hop on there, click out a form, fill out, say, nope, my house is vacant, no chance anybody will ever be there. Or opposite, nope, we're staying because my house is safe and this is how many people are there and should be accounted for after. So it might be something simple as that, but I'll keep you guys updated as we move on. Update wise, I don't plan on changing that process. We'll continue with the constant updates on our website as well as the ones we send through the help of Ken and you guys on the panel. We'll continue doing that process as well. So that's all I have on hurricane season. Other updates here, you know, it's a busy time of year for us. It's budget season, so we got property appraiser values coming out. We're in the middle of a big ISO study. So that's basically, you know, something that they kind of grade the fire departments and tell you whether or not your metrics are good, your staffing is good, equipment. So there's a lot of stuff that goes along with that. We're finishing our financial audit currently. And there's been lots of legislation that's been passed, and quite a few of those also affects fire departments in Florida and staffing levels and equipment and stuff like that. So it's a busy time around here right now, but I won't bore you all with all those details.
I have a couple of questions for Jeff, but before I ask them, are there any other questions from the panel for Jeff?
Mm-mm.
Okay, Jeff, there was some discussion of consolidation of fire districts that the state legislature was looking at. Has any of that taken place?
No, that's one of those every few years there'll be a state representative, or in this case a county representative for the state, like Representative Caldwell was one that was really pushing for that. You know, usually they get into those studies, they make us provide a whole bunch of documentation information, and turns out that the residents either A, don't want it, and or B, it doesn't save any money in the long run. You know, as you guys know, larger forms of government mean larger costs, more employees, you know, more complications. So the only one that's in the process of the study right now is Fort Myers Beach and Iona. And that was at the request of Representative Caldwell. So they are going through that process and doing the studies and everything else. But on a state level, nothing ever came to fruition with that.
Okay. Anything further on the ladder truck? Or are we still where we were before? It's unresolved.
Yeah, so we are, are you referring to agreement wise with South Seas specifically, or just in purchasing?
Well, in terms of you getting a ladder truck, whether that be through South Seas or some other means, I was just curious whether you're going to get the ladder truck to deal with the taller buildings.
We are going to be, that's actually part of that ISO study. So they tell you, they basically require you have one once you have more than, their new metrics is 5 buildings over 3 stories. We obviously have more than 5 buildings over 3 stories. Agreement wise with the resort, there has been no movement on that front as of to date.
Okay. And then one last question. In terms of hurricane season, you'll be working with Ken Goodaham, making sure everybody gets the information out. That was very successful in the past. Are we satisfied with the cell service that we would be able to handle cell service if there's a hurricane on Captiva? Because that's always been a sticking point.
I will say that is the sticking point. At the present, yes, I'm happy with the cell service for what it is for out here. After storms, obviously that always gets worse. We do have a Starlink satellite that we have here at the fire station now after Ian. We invested in that, and we have that as a backup for secondary means. During Helene and Milton, with the addition of those, we didn't seem to have the same communication problems we did after Ian. Now, is that, the infrastructure just wasn't damaged as bad? Hard to say, but the last couple storms, we have had good communication.
Does the Starlink system only work if you're within close proximity of the firehouse, or does it work island-wide, or how does that work?
It only works at the firehouse. We basically run it through our Wi-Fi here at the station, and then we have a cell booster in the station for communications here. Yeah, it's nothing that I can deploy to provide service to the entire island. We don't have that type of technology. Verizon and or FirstNet, actually even T-Mobile will after storms. How quickly they mobilize their equipment just depends on how widespread the damage is.
Okay, so if Verizon goes out or any of the other normal cell services go out, we still, at this point, unless you're by the firehouse, we don't really have an ability to have cell service if people come to the island or try to communicate with you or anybody else.
It is possible, yeah. If their tower in South Seas is damaged, and or all the repeaters that they're in the process of installing, generally those systems do pretty well in hurricanes, but like I said, as you saw in Ian, it wasn't great, but Helene and Milton were good. So
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Any,
Does this,
any other questions for Jeff?
See
oh,
you
this
in-
is sort of for you. Does the CCA have a Starlink, or that was just a temporary thing?
I don't think they do, but that is something that's why I wanted to ask Jeff. I think we may want to work with other organizations on the island to figure out how to get a Starlink somewhere else so that citizens can have ready access to cell phone service.
Yeah, I believe theirs might have been a loaner from the county, but I do not know for sure.
I think it was. So we should look into that as we approach that may be something they'd be interested in, and maybe something we should coordinate if we can, meaning the.
Yeah, with the amount of outages communication wise on a normal basis on Captiva, I mean, we all know power goes out quite a bit. Comcast goes down. CenturyLink did, but I guess they've pulled their service from the island. So we added that Starlink as a backup for our daily operations because we just had too many outages that we needed to combat. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
I'd mentioned, David, that the last hurricane, Tim McGowan somehow wound up with 10 or 12 Starlinks that he distributed, to various people around the island. So he apparently knows how to get these in pretty good numbers.
Okay, so Jay, maybe between the CCA and Tim, we can figure out how to get us another Starlink set up somewhere on a more permanent basis.
Right.
Okay, that's great. Anything else for Chief Powell? Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, next. I'm sorry. Next is chairman or president. Are you president or chairman or both? John Wade.
We don't have a president.
Oh, you're chairman. Okay.
It's just chairman, treasurer, secretary.
Okay.
Those are the officers.
Chairman John Wade from the CEPD, the Captiva Erosion Prevention District. It's yours, John.
So I'm not sure if I mentioned it in our last meeting. Good morning, everyone, by the way. We have, if you haven't met him, we have a gentleman, newly hired general manager who is now full-time on board. Please go by the office. Our new office is in the Kingfisher building on Andy Rossi. He's there every day. Go say hello, introduce yourself. And in the coming months, I'll have him on one of our meetings to introduce him on a more personal level. Right now, he's up to his eyeballs just getting situated and trying to figure out the organization, which is mostly what we've been working on internally. A lot of changes we're making just to make the administrative tools more efficient and help kind of clean up the organization a little bit internally to be more effective in dealing with some of our counterparts in the state level and county level. I don't have a lot. We did have a meeting yesterday. I would like to first off mention that we have a vacancy on the board. You are welcome. Anybody in the public that is a resident of Captiva is welcome to apply. You can go on our website, and there is a link there that'll give you the forms to fill out. And we will be taking those in over the next 30 to 60 days and setting up interviews for hopefully being able to fill that seat within the next 60 to 90 days by the end of summer. Our beach project continues to move along. Nothing's really changed. And we had an update from Aptum yesterday saying that they're still on track to start mobilizing around the second or third week of July. So we will start to see some activity. The mobilizing will occur somewhat on certain parts of the beach, which haven't been determined yet, but a lot of it will be staging at the Turner Beach parking lot as well as the Hager Up parking lot. The main thrust of the initial dredging operations has yet to be determined. There was some debate yesterday about whether they'll be starting on the north end or the south end, and that remains to be determined. We believe that most of the heavy staging we're going to push towards Turner Beach rather than a Hager Up parking lot, just because it makes sense for them, and we believe that it'll be less interruptive to some of the public, ongoings that we try to keep open during the project. Nick Matthews, our Tallahassee lobbyist consultant, didn't really have a lot of positive news yesterday. The legislative budgeting continues to grind down to the wire, which is July 1st for the new state budget. And he didn't have any real positive news about the Tallahassee really embracing any additional funding for the DEP. Right now, we are slated to receive matching funds based on our traditional formula, where the DEP does help us with some beach renourishment, but we were all hoping for some additional emergency funding for Helene and Milton, and that doesn't really seem to be right now a big, huge item for the budget, and kind of perplexing. I'm going to be meeting with him later on in the week to discuss some of the nuances of how that really occurred, because it's kind of shocking to me, and I'm sure maybe many of you guys as well. We all witnessed what happened last fall. It actually had more of an impact on the coastline of Florida than Ian did in regards to the size and scope of the geography. So we thought there'd be a lot of momentum coming from some of the other counties north of us. And Nick said that he felt like he was alone in Tallahassee trying to push some of this additional emergency funding from the storms. So it looks like it's leaning in now towards us really putting a little bit more pressure than we would have wanted to on the county to kind of fill the gap where the state is going to most likely fall short. And we are internally developing some strategies that we've already started to work on, but now that we know that the state funding is going to come up short, we're going to get an exact number within the next 2 weeks. We'll be able to have a definitive approach in our talks with Lee County and to see what they can do for us. Good news is that they did pass as part of the bill, or they haven't passed it yet, but it doesn't seem to be getting any pushback, is that a very large funding for invasive species, approximately about $500,000 will be accessible to us for addressing invasive species in the next coming fiscal year. You may have noticed there's a number of stakes every 30 feet. We just finished, I think they're still finishing up as part of our dune enhancement project, starting from just north of Tween Waters to range marker 92, which is about a quarter mile north of Hager Up parking lot. That is showing the landward side of the dunes, and every one of those stakes, if you guys see them out there, there's a number on them that states the elevation of the bottom of the stake at the current time. So if you see a stake out there and it says, 6.5, right? 6.5 feet. It's kind of hard to believe, but, and I confirmed this with Aptum yesterday, we are looking at a minimum of 10 feet of dunes. So you can do the math and figure out how high at that point, you're going to be looking at additional sand. The numbers I'm seeing at the end of Andy Rossi are averaging around 6 or 7 feet. So we're going to be going up quite a bit. So we thought that was going to be useful to any Gulfront owners who wanted to get some sort of reference point to try to visualize the height of the dunes and where they'll be starting on the landward side. We'll also be using that data to give us more of a visual presentation we're working on. We just had a drone out there yesterday doing some LiDAR scopes, which will be utilized to map out the actual dune lines and the widths so that we can share that with the community sometime this summer. That's about it. Any questions?
Hey,
John?
John, this is John Jensen. Hey, what is the new general manager's name? I don't know if I caught that.
Sure, it's Brighton, Brighton. Heard. Heard.
Okay, thank you. And I understand Alfredo's coming out 3 days a week now to get iguanas.
We've increased his his services a bit.
Tuesday, Wednesdays, and I think Fridays. Yeah. Okay.
That's a good question. I'll check in with Brighton. I think I don't even know if he would know. We have to prioritize that schedule, and it's particularly as we move into our new budget season.
Okay. All right. I talked to Alfredo this morning. He tries to do Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but that can move around. But he said he is doing 3 days right now. So
I'm going to make a note. I'm going to make a note to address this. I'll be honest, it hasn't really been something that the board has discussed in the last few meetings.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I think we're not used to having to deal with it.
Yeah.
At least I wasn't. So yeah, as we go into the new budget season, and once it gets actually incorporated into our 25 budget, our 25 budget, I think it'll become a little bit more part of the day-to-day operations and making sure that that's being managed properly.
All right. Thank you, John.
Anything else?
No.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Dave, you're on mute, I think. Dave, you're on mute, I believe.
That's a good thought. Thank you. Okay. The next thing on the agenda is the County South Seas rezoning update. I can do that quickly. The 912 limit on density on South Seas, which Judge Schenko in the Circuit Court ruled, that case is under appeal. Both the county and South Seas are appealing it. The South Seas submitted their appeal brief, and CCA has submitted their response to that appeal brief. And now they're awaiting the county's appeal brief, and then the CCA attorneys will respond to that appeal. And then there will probably be joint oral argument on all the appeals before the appellate court, and a decision will issue sometime thereafter, but we have no idea what the timing would be at this juncture. The DOA appeal, the appeal that of the decision of the administrative law judge who held that the amendments exempting South Seas from any density limits in the Land Development Code, that appeal has been submitted by the CCA attorney, and it is now pending, and we expect a response from the county and South Seas to that appeal. The decision on the rezoning application before the hearing examiner of Lee County is still pending. We don't expect a decision from the HEX, from the hearing examiner, until sometime at the end of June. And at that point, once we get her recommended decision, it will then be scheduled for a public hearing before the Board of County Commissioners. The three other pieces of news, the people may have heard, it was on Wink News, that South Seas has filed a lawsuit against the CCA. That lawsuit is now being reviewed by the CCA attorneys. I don't have much information on that other than an initial response from the CCA lawyers is that the lawsuit that's been filed by South Seas and their attorney is completely meritless as to both the facts and to the law. And I'm not sure how CCA is going to respond to that, but it looks very much like just a harassment suit that will probably be dismissed. Two other matters, South Seas has also filed or requested public information or a public records request of both, as you know, the panel and the city of Sanibel. They're very similar requests. It's sort of a sad commentary on, somewhat pathetic actually, that it's a fishing expedition engaged in by South Seas, both against the panel and against Sanibel. Our attorney has drafted an initial response, which the panel members have seen. That's a matter of legal action between the legal discussion between the panel members and the panel and the lawyer, but people have seen the response. There is some serious question as to whether or not we are a public agency required to respond to that particular public records request. You've seen the letter that's being reviewed, continued to be reviewed by our attorney. And as soon as we have a final draft, it'll be sent out to the members of the panel. As you all know, there's very little public records having to do with this South Seas rezoning application. As you all know, that's been handled by the CCA. If we've had a handful of documents regarding that over the last couple of years, it's a lot. We will probably, just because we're a public, a transparent organization that makes all our documents public on the website, et cetera, we will probably provide some information, some of those documents, which you can probably get on the website now anyway, to the attorney for South Seas. However, I am pretty confident that no personal emails or personal correspondence between panel members and those people who are primarily testified at the HEX hearing, those 40 individuals that testified at a HEX hearing, none of that's going to be subject to the public records request, as far as I can tell from the panel attorney, but that'll be finalized. Sanibel is dealing with the same issue. They've South Seas have requested a similar information. It's not clear to me exactly how Sanibel will respond at this point, but it is a fishing expedition, and I don't think there's a lot of fish to be caught.
What's their objective in this, David? What are they hoping to accomplish?
I don't know what they're hoping to accomplish. I think they're hoping to see that the panel or Sanibel were in some sort of conspiracy of some sort to interfere with their rezoning in some unlawful manner. I think it's just not there, Jay. So I don't know what they're hoping to do. So we will abide by the law.
In all of our public testimony and everything, have we done anything improper or
No, in fact, we've done very little. The panel has done virtually nothing with respect to this, other than make a donation to protect Captiva on 2 occasions. And at the outset, and I'm just thinking about this as you asked, at the outset, when they amended the land development code to create all kinds of exemptions for height and density, I think the panel sent the county a series of recommendations and protocols with respect to those issues, not particular to South Seas, but to those issues, because those were our code amendments, and those were our density and height restrictions, and we weighed in on that in a more general set of recommendations to the county, which is perfectly lawful. Jay, I don't think there's anything unlawful. I don't think there's anything that our attorney doesn't think there's anything unlawful. And I think that they're going to be, to the extent that South Seas is looking for some sort of smoking gun, they're going to be very disappointed, because I don't think there's anything to be found. And with respect to Sanibel, everything they do is public. They're very careful about that. So I just don't think there's anything there. I think it's a fishing expedition. I think it reflects a bit of desperation. I don't know why, but it is what it is.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Dave. Yeah, just for the record, they made a similar request to the CEPD as well.
Really?
It's in the hands of our attorneys now. So, no different than what you described for the CCP and the CCA is in Sanibel as well. I have a question though. Speaking to some people on the South Seas side, my understanding is that they seem to believe that there is room for interpretation on what they're considering dwelling units. Is that the case? The 2002 administrative document seems to, which obviously limits it to 912, right?
The 1973 zoning approval, which created South Seas, limited it to 3 units per acre and 912 units, which included both residential units and hotel units. In 2002, John, the county did a comprehensive review of what was built on South Seas and what remained to be built. And they issued their ADD, the Administrative Interpretation, in 2002, which was incorporated into the Land Development Code. The 2002 ADD was clarified that the density limit is 912 units, which included both hotel units and residential dwelling units, or condos. And it included the 912 included the 107 hotel units that were located at the big marina right outside that. And they listed every association and every development on South Seas, and the 912 included all hotel units and all condominiums. There was no dispute about that. In 2002, the Bayside Villas started renting lock-off units, taking them above the 912. In other words, those one-bedroom units were divided into 2, and they had a Murphy bed on one side and just a bedroom on the other. And that allowed them to take 102 units and really change it to 204 units, which would take them over the 912. And that was one of the reasons why the CCA filed the lawsuit in 2002, because it was taking them above the 912. The county then went to Bayside Villas and basically enforced the 912 and ordered them to remove the lockout units, keeping it at the 912. At that point, there was a compliance agreement limiting it again to 912. But because there was confusion over that, and I don't have to go into the details, CCA sued back in 2003, sued the county over the way they calculated the units on South Seas to make sure they stayed within 912. And at that point, the county settled the lawsuit with CCA, and they agreed at that point that density would be limited to 912, and the county would not issue building permits above 912 at any time. And they said, they wouldn't issue any building permits above 912 for dwelling units, and the word dwelling units was used in that. But the 912 up until that 2002 agreement, and including that 2002 agreement, always included hotel units because it was just reaffirming the 1973 zoning approval, which included hotels, and the ADD, which is what the lawsuit was about, which included hotel units as part of the 912. Subsequent to that, when CWA sued again last year over this, the Judge Schenko, in his order, in the order granting CCA summary judgment, said that the administrative interpretation in 2002, which the lawsuit was based on, included hotels as part of the 912. He also, in his findings of fact, stated that the 1973 zoning approval also included hotels as part of the 912. And that's in the Schenko decision. The county, in all of their documents and all of their testimony in the DOA proceeding, the county, both the county planning manager and the county zoning manager, testified under oath that the 912 included hotel units as well as condominiums. Even though CCA did not prevail in the DOA proceeding, the administrative law judge in the DOA proceeding found that the 912 included hotel units. So any claim that the 912 limit doesn't include hotel units is belied by every bit of evidence that exists. It is in our view, it is just an incorrect, meritless interpretation, basically a Hail Mary to try to figure out how to get around the fact that the 912 includes hotel units.
So, yeah, that's my question. Is there some other element to their claim or their defense that we're not understanding? Or because there are residents over there that do believe that seems to be the argument. I've read the ADD, I've reviewed it. Everything you just mentioned, I'm very, very aware of the history of it. And it clearly does stipulate that the hotel units are under the definition of dwelling units. So what exactly is the hope for them here? What are they trying to stand on? What's the argument?
The argument they made in the circuit court before Judge Schenko was that currently, not back in 2002 when the settlement agreement was signed, but currently hotel units are considered commercial and dwelling units are considered residential. So they're taking the position that given that the current definition of hotels are on commercial and not part of dwelling units, therefore dwelling units doesn't include hotel units. But the Judge Schenko thought that was a silly argument because the settlement agreement, which he's enforced, was based on the definition that was part of the settlement agreement back in 2002, based on the 1973 zoning approval and the ADD. And the settlement agreement unequivocally includes hotel units as part of dwelling units. So it is I have yet to meet a lawyer other than maybe South Seas who are suggesting that the 912 doesn't include hotel units. It just to me seems like a
So because the definition in some sort of state statutes or common law is different, they're trying to say that would supersede the ADD. Really, they're trying to say the ADD no longer applies due to current definitions. Is what I'm hearing.
Well, the ADD is the current zoning document that governs South Seas today.
Yeah, no, I understand that. They're trying to say that it's being superseded by other definitions.
It's not the ADD, it's the settlement agreement. The definition in the settlement, what the settlement agreement intended when the parties agreed to it, when the county agreed to it, and they agreed to 912 as the limit for density, at that time, what was included in the 912. You don't go look to a later dated definition that appeared in the Land Development Code to understand what the parties agreed to in
Oh, I
2000.
agree. Okay.
That's
Well,
what's
the
going
other
on.
issue is, well, why would they have to vigorously fight this lawsuit and appeal it if they didn't have to? I mean, we've already basically relented that they have 272 units that can be developed, as it's written in the ADD. So, it's kind of interesting when they use that argument, but they're, have hired this appellate attorney out of Tampa to, represent them. So, it's really smoke and mirrors when they start saying things like that. And I've heard through other sources that they are publicly mentioning that they're going to be starting their hotel complex sometime in the fall or early winter. So, who knows? But it doesn't make sense to me that they would need to fight it if that was the case.
I just to be clear, when they thought their rezoning application, they claimed that there was a risk in that because it is possible the county could have said you're entitled to even less than the 912 because conditions have changed. The South Seas would be entitled to less than 912 because conditions change. We now know we have more hurricanes. We know more about the rising sea level, et cetera, et cetera. But so when they made their application, they stated that they were vested to 272 in the industry. You couldn't take that away from them. And the CCA's position at that point is, we agree with you. 912 is vested rights. It's been there for 25, 30, 40 years. And you're entitled to 272 units. And that could be hotel or condos, depending on how you space it out. But it's 272 units. And they said they were vested to it. And the fact is, it included hotels. And the 272 were their allocation of the 912. So, I mean, the argument that 912 doesn't include hotel units is a extremely weak, meritless argument, according to our attorneys and according to Judge Schenko, actually. So I just don't, and according to the judge in the administrative law case, the DOA case, who said in her findings of fact that the 912 includes hotel units. So John, in answer to your question, I think it's just rhetoric, actually. Okay, any other questions on this matter? Okay. Next is our infrastructure committee, Mike Bennett. You're on mute, Mike, just like I was.
Yes, thank you. Morning, everybody. Nothing really new to report here, but just quickly to remind everyone, the county is currently undertaking an environmental study for that potential project on the 800 feet of beach or right-of-way leading up to Jensen's Curve. Nothing new on that front. And once they've completed the environmental study, just to remind you, they will then seek to engage an engineering firm to work with them to detail an approach. And at that point in time, which we hope will be late summer, we will invite the deputy county DOT manager, Doug Busby, hopefully to visit with us on the panel to give us an idea of what they are contemplating in a final form, and also encouraging them to communicate very clearly and hopefully early and often with residents along that stretch who are concerned about beach access. And they are aware that that is a concern. And secondly, there will be conversation with the property owners anyway, because the property owners own the stretch of property behind the right of way, and which is where the mitigation project is expected to begin. And so there'll be a lot of dialogue and a lot of things happening, but at this stage, we're still kind of dormant, waiting for the process to begin. And once again, the estimate for this project is as much as 24 months from today. So this is probably a 2027 project when it finally gets rolling, and we probably won't see a whole lot happen in between. I also reached out to the city of Sanibel and communicated with the deputy city manager about any potential projects that Sanibel may have planned for particularly for the Santiva area, where we know a lot of work has been done in the past and a lot of damage created. What he indicated was that there are what he called potential mitigation projects being considered, but that currently there really isn't anything concrete on those projects. And part of the issue there is funding. Apparently, the city is working with FEMA as well as the state and the county. There are mitigation options available apparently from FEMA, but the first step is Sanibel getting approval for reimbursements on prior storm-related damages. And currently, there's a disagreement between them and FEMA over exactly what those cost estimates should be. And so right now, that's delaying the overall process of any potential mitigation projects until that's resolved. Mr. Chapel indicated that he'll stay in communication with us and let us know as things begin to happen there or something is planned. And I'll touch base with him probably every 6 weeks or so until we get to that point. That's really all I know right now.
Every 6 hours, not every 6 weeks.
6
right?
hours. It's kind of like being a fundraiser, David. When they see you walking down the street, they cross to the other side.
Yes, yeah.
Mike, around Turner Beach, they did a lot of work already. The county did. Is any more planned? Are they satisfied with what's there? Do you have any knowledge at all about that area?
Mr. Busby didn't give me a lot of information about what was happening or not happening on Sanibel, but he said nothing additional was contemplated near the Blind Pass Bridge, and that any other projects are probably going to be further to the south and perhaps the Santiva curve.
And those are therefore Sanibel's responsibility.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any questions from the panel for Mike? Okay, Mike, you have the committee, which is you're the chair of the committee of Tony Lappy and Marguerite, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure that I have that right. Okay, terrific. Next is the Stormwater Committee report. Jay Brown, excuse me, is the chair, and Linda Ladd, I know, is on that committee. Jay?
Okay. Yeah, I've had conversations and email exchanges with the county since the last meeting. The county has selected JMT engineering firm to develop a stormwater management plan for all of Captiva, excluding South Seas, is the area that they're defining as being the area of concern. So South Seas will not be included in the stormwater management plan development. The county is taking a position that this is a county project to manage, and they will be looking for very little input from the community. So this is going to be different than the way I've run projects in the past, where pretty much the panel has worked with consultants to achieve the project's objectives. in this case, according to the county's going to run the project. Any questions we have, concerns about the project are to be communicated to the county person in charge of the project rather than going directly to the consultants. We're going to have a meeting this coming Friday at my house, which will involve representatives from the consultants, the county, and our stormwater committee, which is me, David, Linda Laird, John Rosen, and Sandy Stillwell. I've confirmed that all of members of that committee are going to be at this. And so the purpose of this meeting is to educate the consultant on the stormwater issues that we have historically, and to, I suspect we will be running them around the village area, showing them, where the various problem areas have been. During this meeting, I'm going to try to get a clearer idea than what's in the proposals projects now as to what the actual deliverables of the project going to be. When they say a stormwater plan, what does that mean? Is that engineering drawings or something that we could, start getting financial estimates off of? Or is it simply a model that shows where the big problem areas are and some potential broad scale ideas as to how you might manage those problem areas? The project is supposed to take 12 months long from its start date. And so I have forwarded tons of information to the county, regarding sea level rise studies we've done. They have both the Aptum study and Cheryl's study, which was done before, Aptum. I've given them Tomasco's work on where the groundwater is located and so forth in Captiva. So, I've given them any document I think might be of value to the consultant, and understanding how stormwater flows on Captiva, not just stormwater, but also groundwater. So that's where we are right now. The big step is meeting at my house to try to communicate as much information as we can to the consultants from the county, but I also hope to get the deliverables for this study pinned down a little better than they are in the documents. So that's what I have for stormwater. If there's any questions, happy to address them.
Any questions for Jay?
Jay, I have one. When we were writing the RFP once upon a time, we limited it to the village area. When you talked about this, you said it was Captiva, not South Seas, which makes sense because that's private roads, etc. Have we extended it up to include the Tween Waters stretch and the estate area?
The county did that.
Okay.
Apparently without consulting us. That's the way the county defined it when they sought proposals for the project. They stated it as all of Captiva.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good, when you say without consulting with us, I raised that with them early, and it's part of the, this is a little unusual for us. Usually we get studies funded by the county. This is funded by the federal government. It's a block grant fund through the FEMA processes. And so the protocols are a lot different and much more stringent than they were between when we had a contract with the county for consultants working with the city of Sanibel, for example. And so, yeah, I think they were almost required, from what my understanding is, to include all of Captiva, other than South Seas. It had to be a large enough area that would justify funding from the grant. But my understanding also is that they understand that this is primarily limited to the village, and that there will be a focus on the village, and we can clarify that on Friday. The other issue, and I don't know how real it is, the concern that the county had with us communicating directly with the consultants all along the way was a charging to the county issue. They were concerned that, and Linda may know more about this than I do, but that every phone call that we would make to the consultants would be charged to the county in addition to what the project grant amount was. And so there was some discussion and fear about that. I am hopeful on Friday that we set up a protocol or a process by which we can contact the county at any juncture with any thoughts, and that we'll get feedback from the county with respect to the development of the project from the consent.
David, I don't think there's a disagreement about the amount of contact we would have with the county. The disagreement regards to our ability to work directly with the consultant.
Right.
They want based on the basis that all communication that would go to the consultant would be given to the county, and then the county will decide, what's relevant to pass on to the consultant, get answers from the consultant, decide what's relevant to pass on back to us. As far as, their concern over limiting phone calls and so on, I can certainly say that, the budget for this project is X, and the more questions you run, the less money you'll have to complete the project. So, I don't think cost control is legitimate here. This is just a case where, for reasons I don't understand, the county wants to run the project rather than have the community run it.
Yeah, well, yeah, you may be right, but in my discussions with them, it sounds like they were very concerned about overruns across. And in my conversations, and this we have to set up on Friday, in my conversations, they suggested to me that we could contact them anytime, and that their concern was the duplication. In other words, we would be calling the county about something, about the consultants, about something they already knew, and yet the county would then get charged with it. I don't know how real it is, Jay, but I think that's part of what we have to sort out.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no experience with these federal block grants. And so it's very different, and I suspect the flexibility is less so than with county funded projects. But let's see. The fact that we got this project going, I think is
And there's no way around that. So I'm
Good.
sorry I came across negative about this. I mean, the big picture is, we're gonna get a very thorough, valid stormwater study out of this.
Right. And I agree with Jay. We want to get deliverables that allow us to get to the next step, which is not a study that sits on a shelf, but one that we can build off of and actually do something on the ground. And I think that's the key thing that we want to make sure happens. So that Sandy's, all her restaurants and
Right.
don't get flooded out in the future.
Okay, so those of you that on the committee that are gonna be at this meeting, we want to be able to point out, where the problem areas are, but to the extent that we can talk about any damages, I think will be, helpful to us. Like we can say, all the roads in the village are always flooded and are sometimes impassable after significant rainfall. But if we can go beyond that and say X, Y, and Z homes, are damaged, or, roads are damaged, or there's some damage, we need to do that. A big part of the end product of this study is supposed to be cost benefit analyses for various, approaches to whatever the stormwater management problems are.
Right.
I have a question just for everybody that was this past, when we had the rainy week or two and the roads all flooded again. So for the ones that were there and experienced it, did you notice that the storm drains weren't working at all?
I wasn't there and didn't notice it, but it has been communicated to me that the drains weren't working. Yeah.
Yes. and what happened was, is they used to work when they first originally put them in, but they went to this mesh that they use and they locked the grates down. So before my staff could go in, pull the grate up, get rid of all the junk, and it would go back to working again. But now they've locked them down and they've put this mesh. Now I know that they've probably done that for some environmental reason. And so I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, but then they need to have staff out there unlocking them and cleaning them out, because they ceased to work and everything backed up. And Key Lime Bistro actually had a little water in through the kitchen, and that was that. So so it's a good concept, but it's not working. So we've just got to figure out whether there be some catch basin where it's pumped out with sump pumps into some tank that they can come out and empty later. I don't know what the answer is, but it's not working now.
I think that's a good example of the kind of thing we want to communicate to them at this Friday's meeting, Sandy.
Good.
Jay,
Yes.
this is Rosen. I was here during the last storm, and the rain that fell was maybe 3 to 4 inches. Nothing really significant that you would expect to have the streets flooded the way they were. Speaking specifically about the corner of Andy Rossi Lane and Binder all the way down through the street to Old Lodge. I mean, this was a mild rain. Yes, it was intense at times, but the pooling of water without the drainage that Sandy's expressing, I will tell you that it's obvious to the naked eye that the storm drains are below the level of the bay at the end of Andy Rossi Lane on the east side, let alone if they are in fact plugged. I've tried to go in.
Everything is below sea level, or?
Yeah, and that's an impossibility that it's going to drain in and of itself, let alone any drains that are on the street of Old Lodge Lane beyond that corner of Binder and Andy Rossi Lane. Beyond that, going south on Captiva Drive, the pooling around Merman and Gore Lane and the Green Flash. I mean, this was barely a rain that we should not have to experience this. I'm not talking about storm surge. I'm just talking about rainfall. And to handle just a couple inches, and I mean, it will get up, upwards of 6, 7, 8 inches very quickly in those areas, minimum.
John, was Sunset Captiva entrance flooded?
I didn't notice to that degree. I know you guys put in a big drain there, and I think helps quite a bit in that area. But to answer your question, Linda, no, I didn't see that area specifically or
It wasn't noteworthy.
Yeah, and I wasn't out there, Linda, to notice.
When I drove through there, it did look like that particular storm drain was working, and that was the newest one that they put in. They didn't have as much flooding there at all.
Keeping the drains cleaned, I'm guessing is part of the DOT obligation.
Yeah.
Is the fallen? Maybe it's just a matter of what do we know about what their maintenance has been in some of these drains?
John, they've been coming out on a regular basis, but they've been coming out when we've called them also, and I've seen them vacuuming out the drains. But I think to John Rosen's point, when you have a high tide or a king tide or just a regular high tide, and you have a rain at the same time, the water can't get out the pipe that all these drains flow into. So all the drains that we're talking about flow into a storm scepter right at the base of Andy Rossi, right across from McCarthy's. And then a pipe goes from there straight out by the kayak launch into the bay. And if that pipe is below, if water is flowing into the pipe, water can't flow out of the pipe. So it really depends on what the tides are at any given time during the rainfall. And we've discussed that in the past. Do you have a pump to get it out beyond the high tide? Do you have a deep injection well? Do you have normally you would have a big area, catchment area to house this water, but we don't have the space for that. So these are all the challenges that we have to deal with to figure out how to get assuming the drains are clean and we keep them clean, how do you get the water out into the bay when you have a high tide? And how do you make sure that the water that's going out into the bay isn't just going to pollute the bay, so that we have all these nutrients and oil and all kinds of other things from the road going out, including fertilizer, going out into the bay. So those are the various challenges. They're both logistic, they're both engineering, and they're both environmental. And
which is why we're hiring this we're having a $500,000 study or $200,000 study or whatever to get the engineers to work it.
Let me add this to it as well. The drains on the streets that I mentioned prior to the repaving was not as bad as it is today. I inquired of the county when they were working on the roads, noticing the type of pavement they were resurfacing with. And they assured me that what they were putting down was more porous than what was on there before.
Oh, that's interesting, John.
And
So we had,
I think from my experience, it's almost the opposite. It's exacerbated the amount of flooding versus assisting in the way that it was before then. Now, that could be a number of things. It could be the pitch of the grading. It could be that it wasn't done correctly. It could be incorrect materials. I don't know, but I'd sure like to understand what the logic was when they repaved, of why we're experiencing greater flooding than we did for discussion purposes 3-4 years ago, before the repavement was completed.
do we have people doing paver projects around there as well, John?
Yeah, people have done their driveways, but that's not the issue. It goes up onto the driveways from the street and in pools, for example. And the flow just doesn't make sense, and it can't go anywhere, as I described and David described. If the drain's below the water level, it's not going to go anywhere but up. It's like pouring water into a glass, and it's going to overflow at some point because the glass is full.
There's no way that it was engineered that way. If it's a gravity-fed system, the drains are not going to be below sea level. There's got to be more to it than that. There has to be, if they are, there has to be a pump system, but we don't really know how this thing is engineered at this point. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I think we have the engineering drawings from the county, and we provided them to Kimberly Horn when they did the original RFP.
I provided them to the new also.
Jay provided them to the new consultants. So this is one of the questions.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it drain? It may be just that the pipe at the outflow is too high. I mean, who knows? Or too low rather. So we'd have to look at it. But I think we all have a handle on the problem. Sandy, did you want to say something?
Yes, just one last thing, and because this will be all brought up at the meeting Friday, but this is good because some of you on the committee, on the panel aren't going to be there. And Linda's point though about the driveways is very good. You know, my Sanibel house, when I did the pavers brick, I really had a hard time getting permits to put in pavers on my driveway, but I had handicapped people coming and going, and so they had changed their ordinance to where you could use the pervious pavers bricks, and that was the only kind. They had certain specifications of what kind. So if we had some kind of rule like that within the building department for permits to put the driveway, you know, then that would be a very helpful thing, that if you did pave any parking lots at all or driveways, that it should be pervious paver bricks.
Okay.
I have a question. No, at that meeting, should someone from the fire department be invited also? Because very often they are the first responders. They are, I don't know, have to do cleanup. You know, sometimes with flooding, there is mud on the streets.
Yeah, that's a good point, Margaret. I'll see if they want Jeff to attend the meeting.
Hey,
We don't,
Following up one comment to Sandy's. At Sunset Captiva, we put these huge tanks down underground that then drain into the groundwater. As John will say, I wasn't convinced this was going to work, but they work tremendously well, far beyond my hopes. And that is trying to get the runoff and the rain into the groundwater faster. So it's not just having to be able to pump it out into the water. If we can get it underneath the surface, as John, we're talking now, John Jensen had engineered for Sunset Captiva. That is another solution. If we can get the runoff, we can get the rain into the ground rather than just flowing out pipes. And that's something everybody can do if they don't put pavers everywhere and pave everything.
Well, these are all issues that, I'm sorry, somebody want to say something?
This is John Jensen. Yeah, Linda, those tanks, we put those in because our entrance would always flood.
Right.
And it definitely helped. Now, it wasn't a super big tank, but it's doing its job for our entrance. Now
Yes.
to put it in to take care of all the water in
I'm not
in
saying
town but this system, there's ways to do things, obviously, and this worked for us.
that was exactly my point, John.
Yep.
So
Thanks, Linda.
I think this was a helpful discussion.
I think one other point I want to make about the study, they're not just looking at, what the flooding issues are and the issues that it creates for us, but they're also going to be looking at this from the point of view of coastal water quality. I think we've all seen past work from SCCF, which says that stormwater runoff is the number one, generator of pollution in the coastal waters from our island.
John Wade, a comment?
I just wanted to confirm, I don't know if Jay said this or if you're going to find out at the meeting. What was the anticipated delivery on this study?
Timing?
Yeah.
A year.
Oh, they need a year. Okay, so we won't see the results. All right, so next spring. All right.
Or 5 years. Do you think they're going to be doing anything in terms of looking at what happens when we get inundated? Do you see that at all happening, Jay?
You mean what happens when we get inundated?
Well, are there ways to get the inundation off the island faster and things like that? I'm just asking. This is curiosity.
I would think that's part of this study.
Well, that's okay. Because I think that would be good is where we get inundated, can we get rid of this water faster?
I think that would definitely be part of the deliverables.
Okay, thank you.
But, again, we should try to confirm that at the Friday meeting.
All right. Well, I hope the consultants were listening to this discussion. Maybe that would be helpful. And we'll go from there. Anything else on stormwater?
I think I've covered all the points I wanted to, David.
Thank you, Jay. You're on again for wastewater.
I am still at wastewater where I have been for the last year. I cannot get Sanibel to finish this Raftellus study.
Okay, what I'm going to suggest, Jay, I'm going to be back.
The study was supposed to take a month.
Yeah, I know.
And this study started over a year and a half ago.
Right. Okay. I think we need to set up a meeting with Sanibel very shortly. And I will take responsibility for setting up the meeting, and then we'll see where we stand. Okay.
Well, I got a memo from Dana week before last that for sure we would have an update meeting this past week.
Right.
I haven't heard from him.
Okay. I will follow up on that. I will take the responsibility. Okay, Development Committee, Marguerite.
Yeah, I'm going to be the shortest. There's nothing really to report. It's I've talked to Ken. So yeah, I have nothing to report.
Okay, Marguerite, could I ask you to meet with Ken or discuss with Ken and sort of begin to set up the elements of a plan for fundraising for the coming year after this?
Yes.
And then you and Ken can present that together. Ken, do you want to give a report on the financials just quickly?
Sure, it's included in your packet. All the expenses are within our expectations with the exception of the retainer for the lawyer, which we did not budget for, but we have the money to cover. As of now, we certainly have cash on hand, but we will need to be looking at fundraising in the fall. And as Marguerite said, we talked a little bit this week and we can start working on more specific plans and timing so that you know when we'll start asking people for money and we can coordinate that with other groups or activities.
Okay, yeah, we'll look forward to some rudimentary or at least the beginnings of a plan.
It probably will be at the August meeting. I will not be available in July, so we can have a plan, but Marguerite would have to present on her own.
Okay, no, so August is fine. Let's set it up for Marguerite. That gives you plenty of time. The August meeting would be perfect. Okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, next thing on the agenda was nominating committee. Actually, there was an error in the agenda. It said nominating committee, the chair was John Jensen. Obviously, that's not correct since John Jensen is leaving the panel. The chair of the nominating committee was Tony Lappy, and we had tentatively, or we had appointed Mike Boris from the village and Jim Berg from the estate zone or Gold Coast. And I don't think they may not even know they're on the committee yet, but the committee has to give its report in October, so we have plenty of time for them to do their work. I'll speak to Tony, just make sure he speaks to Mike and to Jim. There are two panels, just to remind everybody, there are two panel positions that are open as a result of people being timed out. John Jensen will no longer be on the panel and Tony Lappy will no longer be on the panel, though we hope both of them will assign them the committees to make sure that they still fully participate in the work of the panel. The CPOA has two appointments, but Sandy is one of them and Marguerite is the other. They can be renominated for another 3 years, and I'm hopeful that they will be. And the CCA has one nomination, that's John Rosen. He can be renominated, and I hope they do that also, but that'll be up to them. Any questions about the nominating committee? Okay.
If there's people out there who want to be nominated, is there someone they should contact?
We will have the committee put something out. Ken will work with them to do that well before October. We do that every time. Okay. In terms of, before we get to panel members' comments and questions, at the last meeting, this issue of annexation with Sanibel came up, as you know, because there was this opinion piece that was published in the Chronicle, and we got a couple of questions about it. And so the question I don't want to ignore it. So the question I have for the panel is whether we should place the subject of annexation again with Sanibel on the agenda for July and have a discussion of it. And if we do want to do that, then we would start with a report from Jay, who was engaged in discussions with Sanibel on annexation before the whole set of hurricanes occurred. And there was an issue of a survey and how we would do a survey. And there was some feedback we got from Sanibel, and we got feedback from other people. And I just don't know what the panel's views of this is, whether or not we want to revisit this issue now or put it off to some future date. So it got raised at the last agenda, at the last meeting. Again, I don't want to ignore it. I just want to know whether panel members think it should be on the July agenda or some other future agenda?
I guess my question, Dave, is Mike. I'm not real excited by the prospect of that. This gentleman that wrote the letter seemed to believe that somehow this was some magic bullet that was going to change the dynamic of South Seas. I'm not a lawyer, but from a logic standpoint, it seems to me like that horse is out of the barn a ways. So I guess my question is, what's the motivation for wanting to explore this again at this point in time, particularly if it wouldn't really have any likelihood of impact on what we're battling the South Seas about.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah,
I feel the same way about it. I mean, it seems sort of counterproductive right now to even consider it if if, like Mike said, the horse is out of the barn already with the development of South Seas. Why would we waste our time with it if there's really no benefit to annexation?
Well, the benefit of annexation would be possibly in the future. As I understand it, I don't think that would give us any kind of protection from whatever happens at South Seas. But we have seen now that the county totally disregards the wishes of Captiva, in their land use policies. They've changed them here in a big way without our consent. There's nothing to say, down the road that they won't change it again, against the will of the people. And, South Seas could happen again and again and again at other places, on the island.
Yeah, but your property rights with Sanibel, as it stands, is also more restrictive to your residential properties in a tremendously huge way, which has affected the values, Sanibel versus Captiva. And so I just, if this was something that was a mechanism to prohibit South Seas from doing what they're doing today, I would be going down the streets with a loudspeaker for it. But I just don't see it helping us now with what they're doing inside the resort.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ken. I don't think it helps what's going on now. It would be simply a matter of preventing this from happening again and again in the future. My own feeling, and having worked with Sanibel on this before, is I don't think they have any appetite for it right now anyway.
Then we shouldn't be wasting our time.
I have a little different attitude. As most of you know, I always liked this idea, but I see it as being disruptive at this point in time. I think there's controversy among our residents. We don't need any controversy right now. We have to
a lot more controversy, I'll promise you that.
Yeah, well, I think we need to focus on our big 95% problem. And then let's get through this. And if we want to then work on what to do for the future, work on that. But I think right now, trying to keep us focused and aligned is the most important.
Yeah, I agree. This is John, and I agree. I would be against it. And once you do it, you can't go back. So
yeah,
I guess the issue is, should it be on the agenda for next meeting, not whether we're going to agree or disagree. And I think what I'm hearing is that it's not to be placed on the agenda for the reasons that have been discussed: distraction, South Seas, etc. Notwithstanding the fact that maybe in the future it can be revisited. So from what I hear, I don't think it's going to be on the agenda.
That's a good point, John. I would agree with you.
Hey, John.
Yeah, I agree.
Is anybody on the panel? I appreciate John getting it back to the question that was before us. Is there anybody in the panel that feels strongly it should be on the July agenda? Okay, we will keep it on the back burner, recognizing that we did start this process, that we got feedback from Sanibel. We all recognize that there are people on Captiva who are dead set against this. And we know there are people on Sanibel who are dead set against this. And we know there are people on Captiva and Sanibel who are really in favor of it. And I think the sense here is that we don't want to engage in something that's going to be controversial and is going to divide our community at this point. And we recognize that maybe something we have to revisit in the future.
I think that's perfectly said, Dave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next thing, are there any other comments from panel members? Any questions or comments from panel members? Okay. Ken?
I have one.
Yeah.
Is this the general discussion part of the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, I'm being cited for turtle light violations for interior lighting in my home. And I have never before been cited for interior lighting on the beach. And I'm just wondering if
This is a huge issue, Jay.
in the way they're doing this or something, or something going on.
I will tell you, we have a very overzealous code enforcement officer who is hammering everybody. And, you know, even rental units that, you know, owners, you know, some of my clients have no control over. I have one client that has already been summoned to appear before the hearing examiner. And, you know, this has just gotten completely out of hand. As I've been on the island since 1988, I have never seen the level of enforcement that I am seeing today with this particular issue. And look, I do appreciate the fact that we need to protect the turtles. I'm all for it. And, you know, but this has gotten to the point of being ridiculous now.
Could I suggest that at the next, Jay, I don't know what your timing is of what you've received, but I think it'd be useful if we bring a representative from SCCF at the next meeting.
Staff has already brought this to SCCF and they no longer have, they don't have any involvement with the program.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strictly county now, David.
Okay, that's interesting.
Is there any way that someone could accumulate a list of those specific people that have been identified for this issue, such that whether it's on the Gold Coast, is it in South Seas, how many, what's the number, who are they, etc., and when they were
John, it's a
issued?
lengthy list.
Do we know who the enforcement officer is?
Yeah, I've got her name. I'm talking to her.
I spoke to her yesterday.
Yeah, it's Paula somebody or other.
Yeah.
I've got her name somewhere here in my stack of papers.
Do we want to invite her to the next panel meeting?
Yeah, I have the last letter. I just wrote her a letter saying, surely there's been some change in how, you know, these violations are being determined, or there's some change in the measurement of how much light is reaching turtle net.
The loss of vegetation over the last 3 years is probably having somewhat of an impact. Not saying that's the reason, but that's definitely one of the variables.
Or when I've lost vegetation, so but at any rate, I've got that question posed to her, and I said, at the end of my letter, which she has not responded to yet, I assume there are many others like me, and I'd suggest it would be a real public service for her to explain how she's determining whether or not we're violating code.
Okay, Jay, why don't
So I suggest I continue on with her, and then maybe if I learn something, bring it up at the panel meeting, or have her appear at the panel meeting or something like that.
You should ask her to come to the panel meeting. It may be that there's some legitimate basis for what she's doing. It may not. Maybe she doesn't get it, or maybe she understands something we don't. So if
Right.
you give me her last name and contact number, I will
Okay.
invite her to the next panel meeting.
All right,
Yeah.
I will give it to you within a few minutes after the meeting.
Oh, I don't need it now. Yeah, that's great. Any other comments from panel members? Or
No.
questions? Okay, Ken, are there any comments or questions from the audience?
There was one that I answered, but you may want to weigh in on it. The question was, is there anything to stop South Seas from starting construction of the hotels and condos that would exceed the current 912 unit limit? Or do they have to wait until final judgment from the courts?
The answer is they can't build any hotels or condominiums until their rezoning is approved by the county at this point. And that obviously is not immediate. And then I am fairly confident that the 912 will be enforced until such time. Any stay that exists, will be moved to vacate. And then the county would not be permitted to issue building permits above the 912 until such time as the Schenko decision is reversed on appeal. So it is my opinion that they would not be building anything until the Schenko decision is reversed, if it is ever reversed. And if it's not reversed, then they'll be limited to 912, and the county won't be able to issue any building permits. But that remains to be seen.
Okay. David, I have this person's name and a suggestion for you.
Okay,
Turtles. Her name is Paula, Paula, Quezada, Quezada.
okay,
Environmental Code Enforcement Specialist is her title.
okay,
Her office is 1500 Monroe Street, Fort Myers, 33901.
right.
Her cell phone is 239-822-9911.
822-9911. Okay.
And this number is 239-533-8895.
Okay. Okay. I will on behalf of the.
Yes, I'm here, David, I think a wonderful approach to her would be, I'm hearing from many members in the community that it seems that turtle code enforcement is being much more aggressive in the past. And the Captiva Community Panel would like to know about this and what's happening.
Okay. No, I'm sure they already know because the county listens to our meetings, so I'm sure she's been already advised. It may
Okay.
be that the Turtles hired a lobbyist.
Right.
I don't know. But in any case, we will invite her and hopefully she'll come. If not her, somebody from the county. Nobody on Captiva wants to harm the turtles or the
No,
nest.
I mean, that's absolutely true, but it's just, you
So
know,
we need to understand what their expectations are and make sure that they're reasonable and that that they can be complied with. That's all. Okay, great. Do any other questions or comments from the panel? Okay, it's 10:35. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Second.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Good meeting.
Everybody.
Yes, good meeting. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.